On today's episode, we preview the 2025 athletics with A's broadcaster Jessica Kleinschmidt. You're listening to the Bucko Banter podcast, brought to you by the Just Baseball Media Network. Cue the music.
Rockin' one-on-one, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plates, and in case after case, run my race at my pace, clear the grass of the snake.
Welcome back to another team preview. Today we've got The Athletics. Got to make sure I say it correctly. The Athletics, and we are joined by Jessica Kleinschmidt. Jessica, welcome on to Bucko Banter.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, no city in front of it. It's just The Athletics for now.
It's going to take some getting used to here, but
is it going to be hard for you? I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, this was my
sorry.
practice. This is my only practice going into the season because I know I'm going to trip up.
I get it. Actually, somebody
times.
During spring training, the official announcer said Oakland, and he looked at me, and I was like, "It's okay. Like I've adjusted, but like not everybody does, and that's fine."
There's going to be slip ups throughout the year.
Yeah,
understandably so. But let's talk about this offseason. And last year, 69-93, fourth in the AL West. I'm going to go through some additions, some subtractions, and then I want to get your grade on the offseason and if this is enough to compete in the West. So let's go through the free agents first. Luis Urias, Jose Leclerc, Gio Urshela, Luis Severino is the big one, TJ McFarland, and then via trade they added Johnny Pereda, Jeffrey Springs, and Jacob Lopez. And then they lost Scott Alexander, Ross Stripling, Alex Wood, Trevor Gott, Tyler Nevin, Kyle Mueller, Danny Jimenez, and then via trade, they lost Joe Boyle, Nick Allen, and Daz Cameron. Not a bad offseason. They extended Lawrence Butler as well, which is a big one. How would you grade this, and is this enough going into 2025?
They also extended Brent Rooker. We can't forget that.
Yes.
Probably the most important thing overall. I mean, if you want to give a grade, I was a crappy student, but I'd say like a B, like a solid B. I think if they got one more starting pitcher, it would be like an A for sure. I'm actually way more excited to see what Jeffrey Springs does than Luis Severino. Because I mean, with Luis, I know there's going to be extra pressure there. He's competed. He's pitched in high leverage situations. A's GM David Forrest even saw him in a high leverage situation during the playoffs against the A's. In the late 2000, I think it's 2018, 2019. So we know what's there. We know what he brings to the table. For Jeffrey Springs, you mentioned the trade. Joe Boyle going to the Rays was fantastic for him because of the way that they are with pitcher development.
Yeah.
When it came with Jeffrey Springs, they're also really good with veterans and rehabbing. So he got all three of those as far as what he can do. And the numbers speak for themselves as well. And as far as the other pitchers, Jacob Lopez, he's coming in as a starter, but he's also a swingman, which the A's have a lot of depth with, a lot of guys who can start, who can open, but of course, who can go in the bullpen, be a long man, close out the roles. But I don't think they're going to tell Mason to not close out, maybe give him off his feet a little bit every now and then. And it's the first time in a long time. I don't want to say disposable arms because it's not necessarily like the Seattle Mariners there, but for the first time in a while to have that starting rotation as, bust or I guess big. There's a lot of words I could use. A good starting rotation for the first time in a long time is great. And as we know, it doesn't matter what's going on come the trade deadline. Everybody wants more starting pitching. You mentioned free agency. Everybody wants more starting pitching. It doesn't matter how many you have, even with all the guys. And if you have JP Sears as your third guy, like that's a pretty solid rotation. Yeah. And even with that, with David Forrest saying we're open to bringing on more pitching, what's that saying? And you mentioned the extensions. As far as Brent and Lago, as much as it was great for the team numbers wise, it was great for the team community wise. Brent's always putting himself, in front of amazing broadcaster future for sure. And he does everything off the field just as good as he does on the field. And I know you mentioned those 69 wins in 2024, but when you're watching the guys every single day doing those minute things that are making them better, the wins don't really, characterize what they actually accomplished. Plus, of course, with the move, that's all people cared about. Nobody cared about baseball. So this is going to be a nice change where they can actually ask about the baseball that's taking place. So I was very impressed with the offseason. And, some of the trades, and I was really bummed to lose Nick Allen. I think he just needed a change of scenery. Ryan Noda is on the Angels now. Defensively, first base, I was kind of worried about how they would figure that out. But Tyler Soderstrom was pretty awesome defensively at first base. I don't think we're going to have to wait that long to see Nick Kurtz there at first base. And people are comparing him to Matt Olson. I don't want to jinx it. I wrote that for Baseball America with Ed Sprague, the director of player development. And when you are in the same sentence as Matt Olson, people are going to pay attention to you. And he's legit. The guy comes as advertised. And I even mentioned how good the farm system has been over the last few seasons because of the turnover and so on. And you mentioned these trades. We didn't really give up a lot. Like I mentioned, Joe Boyle, once he starts throwing strikes, he's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Paul Blackburn once said, who doesn't love a 6'7" guy who throws 100? It's great, but if you can figure out the command, the guy will be lethal. And I'm really happy for him. Like I said, it looks like he's having a pretty solid spring as well. That's what happens when you go to the Rays and I mentioned the pitching development. So overall, it's really exciting. As far as the players go, we haven't seen the best of JJ Bleday, and we certainly haven't seen the best of Shea Langoliers. So imagine how that's going to be. And Zach Geloff is going to have a comeback season offensively, hopefully. And just I can go down the list of all the positives that are happening. And I don't think you can argue with a B rating for the offseason on top of what the team already possessed.
Jessica, how about you're moving to Sacramento this year to play for, I think, 3 years potentially, however long it takes to build a ballpark in Vegas. It seems like the Athletics were more aggressive this offseason than they were in years past. Were you surprised to see that? I mean, they went out and signed Luis Severino to a multi-year deal. I'll tell you what, as Pirates fans, we'd love to see a multi-year deal here in Pittsburgh. We haven't seen one in over a decade.
I was surprised at the beginning, but I've seen this front office for years. I really view them as athletes and the competitors just at the desk, essentially. And they want what's best for the team. And over the years, when you are paying attention to drafts, you're kind of like, what were they thinking? What was the brass thinking? But as time goes on, you're kind of like, I see what happened here. And you look at the ROI, Shea Langoliers for the trade. Everybody was really excited about Christian Pache, and I got more texts about Shea with his raw power. And of course, when you're a catcher and you're a servant to the pitcher, people don't really care how good you are at the plate. It's what you do behind it. And he's able to kind of, I guess, even out. And that's what Sean Murphy did. He was great as far as a game planner. And then eventually we saw his bat, and then the rest is history. So I think when we saw that coming, it was like a domino effect. We saw the ROI, and the ROI was going to take a while because we traded for a lot of prospects. They weren't going to immediately be in the bigs, and the ROI is not always good. There's a lot of guys who didn't pan out. And I mentioned Christian Pache, and he's doing well now. And it was a situation, maybe he needed change of scenery as well. But as far as the monetary value of these guys, once it started, I wasn't surprised. And David Force told us, because I asked him what the offseason was going to look like. And he said, I was told that I'm going to be able to raise the payroll. And at first I thought it was because of playing in Sacramento that you'd have to convince these guys to play in a minor league ballpark, which I want to put this out there. They're not playing at a Babe Ruth field. It's still the same, measurements as a major league ballpark.
Yeah,
I want people to understand that. And as far as the amount of money, I was shocked, but the payroll, every now and then they go out and they have a really good off season. And just a few seasons ago, when they acquired, who'd they acquire? Jan Gomes, Starling Marte, they had like the best off-season or mid-season trade deadline, I think, of any team. And they were quiet about it. They didn't really talk about it. I think that was during COVID too. So that was a whole.
They even went after John Lester that one year too, before he went.
John, we have like BDE every now and then. Like it's pretty awesome. And even to the point where as these moves were being made, we're like, why not go after this? We got Luis Severino, bro. Like this is like, let's go. And you start with that. And to even sign Brent to an extension is kind of saying like it's the real deal right now. And I think that that's something to be said. So Force told us, he's going to extend payroll, and he's absolutely doing that. And I think it's great.
I'm glad you brought it up because I was looking up Sutter Health Park earlier today, and the dimensions are almost identical when you're talking from the fence. Obviously, we're not going to have the foul territory. No one will ever have the foul territory that the Coliseum
Pitchers are going to
possessed.
be pretty upset. It's cool though,
Yeah.
because Forrest even said he was like, it was easy to recruit pitchers at the Coliseum. Now it's going to be
Right.
a little different. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but it's a unique year because we have two teams playing at minor league parks, and yet they are big league stadiums. But I think it's for the Rays almost it's a bigger difference because of the dimensions, and you're playing outside in the Florida heat. Oh, it's going to be absolutely brutal. I don't know how most of their games are going to get rained out this year. I don't know how they're going to play, but let's look at this projected lineup. We mentioned a lot of these names before, but this is what Fangraphs have. And then I want to get your opinion on this, or if there's anyone else that could sneak into here come opening day. Right field, we got Lawrence Butler, DH Brent Rooker, center field JJ Bleday, behind the dish Shea Langoliers, first base Tyler Soderstrom, second base Zach Geloff, Seth Brown in left, Gio Urshela at third, and then going into his second year, or he's probably still going to be a rookie this year, Jacob Wilson, former Bucco, son of a Bucco here, and then on the bench Johnny Pereda, Luis Urias, Miguel Andujar, former Bucco, and Drew Avens. Honorable mentions, as you mentioned earlier, Nick Kurtz is not far off, Logan Davidson, to name a couple. How are we feeling about 1 through 9? And is there a name that I haven't mentioned that could potentially go into this lineup?
Left field's going to be very interesting. I think we won't have to wait a long time for Colby Thomas, but until then, don't forget about Miguel Andujar, because the way that he has amazing springs where
Always.
I hate asking about spring training numbers because there's always a coach that says like, doesn't matter, Jessica. I'm like, but if they're batting 500, like you got to pay attention. And I just talked to him recently because last year I asked what was working for him at the plate. And he said, I feel just as good as I did in 2018. He got second in AL Rookie of the Year voting behind that Shohei Ohtani guy. So if you're feeling
if
you need me to tell you who it is, we'll do that offline. But it was one of those things where I just asked him, I think last week when I was at spring training, if he still feels the same way. And he said, absolutely. The guy's a gamer. And I think when it comes to his approach at the plate, he's quiet in his own way. It's kind of like he swims, but there's no splashing. He's that kind of guy. JJ Bleday has the exact same approach. And I talked to his former coach, Tim Corbin, about that, or manager, Tim Corbin, about that. And I think those guys are the sneaky ones. So left field's going to be interesting. I don't hate the addition of Seth Brown, especially what he was able to do last season after going to AAA and figuring some things out, pretty much what Law did as well. So that's going to be kind of interesting there. I think the backups are what's important too. I know you mentioned Logan Davidson. The guy, I want him to have a shot. When you have a switch hitter who has been in the bigs or the minors forever, and you have a decent spring, like you can't ignore that fact. But I'm really excited to see what Max Muncy does. I think that's going to be a guy that, he was going to be the call up if he wasn't injured instead of Jacob Wilson last year. And I was told that by the front office in an on the record interview. And I'm not saying that Jacob Wilson didn't deserve it, because obviously he does. He's done a fantastic job at shortstop. And you mentioned his dad, and that baseball IQ happened when he came out of the womb because of what Jack did. And also great guy. It's great to see him out at the park all the time. You would never, I'm not saying like you would have a certain kind of attitude as a former big leaguer, but he's such a dad now. It's the cutest thing. Yeah. And so that's been good. But through that lineup sounds pretty accurate. Obviously, like Rook and Shea could probably move a little bit as far as the actual lineup itself. Law hitting leadoff is always fun because, he wants to pounce on those pitchers as early as possible. But you also have to remember there's Max Schumann, who's the super utility man, and he's going to be put in everywhere. I had a really good conversation with him about that. He ended up being the starting shortstop for a long time last year because Daryl Hernandez got injured, and hoping to just have him as a utility man for now. But the beauty of him is you can put him anywhere defensively, offensively, and of course, like the certain scenarios, running as well. People don't think about utility men in the running aspect of the game, and he's able to do that. So as you can tell, me being out of breath, there's a lot of great problems going on in that organization. Like when it comes to cuts, it's going to be very, very close. And I think that that's such a good problem to have. And I mentioned the pitching, but it's a pretty accurate lineup. Left field, like I said, is going to be interesting. and as far as Urias, I think he's going to be kind of going back and forth between second and third when Ursula needs a break or when Geloff needs a break. And then Max Muncy could also be kind of a Max Schumann type when he gets up. Obviously cuts still need to take place toward the very end, but that's going to be an interesting dynamic as well. Catcher wise, I know you mentioned Johnny, but we can't close the door on Kyle McCann. He got outrighted to AAA, and I asked about him. Actually, I didn't even ask about him. I asked about the catching competition, and Kotze offered up Kyle McCann, a lefty bat. Little bit, he struggles defensively as a catcher, so that part is a little bit. I'm sure he wants to work on, but from the left side offensively and that power, the guy's phenomenal. So maybe a platoon situation there when Shea needs a break.
That might not matter much longer if we get ABS into baseball eventually. But Lawrence Butler is a really fun player to watch. I'll tell you what.
And defensively, he gets in the way of the ball. Is what like, he's got a lot of catcher's interference. Like ABS, that has nothing to do with ABS. Like
gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But no, I'm really excited for Lawrence Butler. I think he's going to be a name that a lot of baseball fans are going to be really excited about for years to come. I'm excited that they were able to extend him. Let's get into the rotation real quick. Luis Severino, Jeffrey Springs, Osvaldo Bido, former Bucco, JP Sears, and Joey Estes.
Joey!
It was announced today that I think Mitch Spence is going to be in the bullpen in a long man role. Yeah. I think I saw that on Twitter. But I'm really excited for this rotation because I'm a big fan of Jeffrey Springs. I love that trade for the A's. And you bring in Luis Severino on a multi-year contract to lead the rotation. I think this is going to be a sneaky good rotation in the West. Do you see anything shaking up differently before opening day here, or is this what we're going to be looking at?
The order might be different, but that's what we're looking at. And the thing with Joey and Mitch, that was a competition from the beginning of spring. And Joey's a very competitive guy, and I think that was really healthy for them. They pitched above their maturation level last year as rookies. And Mitch Spence, the Rule 5 guy, you never know what you're going to get with those guys. They're a box of chocolates, and he stepped up for sure and got so many extra innings than they were anticipating as a rookie to come out of the bullpen as well, which I think it was almost a better, easier decision because Estes has always been stretched out and built up as a starter. And we know Mitch, I mentioned those swingman role that the A's have a lot of. He's able to do that. And a long man scenario, because you never know. Even Luis Severino has bad days, and you need a guy to sometimes come in earlier than perhaps you would anticipate. I could see Bido coming after JP because I mean, it really depends. But I still like the thought of JP in that third slot just because of the way that he is. I know you love Jeffrey Springs. JP is ridiculous. He's got this deceptive way about him that like Aaron Judge and Juan Soto hated going up against, and a tough Baltimore Orioles lineup as well. They couldn't see the ball coming out of his hand, and you have that in the middle of your rotation. It's filthy. So, and I'm right there with you with Jeffrey Springs, especially as a veteran guy. I watched one of his starts the other day. And the thing that sucks about veteran guys, especially Jeffrey and Luis, I'm the girl who calls them by their first name, just to FYI. But I don't know how they actually are at spring because they're veterans. They know their bodies well enough. So I wasn't able to see what he's able to do full force, because a lot of these, like JP, I think went over 5 yesterday, and it's for the younger guys to kind of, get ready. And Luis and Jeffrey, they're just like, I'm healthy, and that's what's exciting. And Jeffrey specifically is not used to having a spring where he can just pitch. It's usually a rehab scenario. He's injured, and that's a different mentality as well. And Bido had one of the most ridiculous Augusts ever that I've ever seen. I was surprised he didn't get pitcher of the month. He had a sub-2 ERA and was just like, I don't even know how to describe it, but he was just insane, and it was so much fun to watch. He had a kind of an iffy spring, very up and down. But like I said, you take those numbers with a grain of salt. But you're right. This rotation's really filthy. And like when it comes to those swingmen like Jacob Lopez, Hogan Harris, JT Ginn was actually a guy that people were thinking was going to make that rotation as well. So he did really well last season. And the list really goes on and on. Brady Basso is still coming. He's coming back from an injury. That guy's ridiculous. I don't want to say that like his curveball reminds me of Chris Bassett, but I don't want to not say that. The way that it plays off of his fastball is insane. And he also pitched in the PCL and got PCL pitcher of the month last August. And I don't care who you are, that's a tough thing to do in the PCL. So like I said, the pitching is pretty ridiculous right now.
Before we get in the bullpen real quick, I'll let Adam get in the bullpen and whatnot. But I just got to tell a funny story. I had a friend that worked in the Pirates front office that went over to the A's front office, and he had said to me that when the Pirates lost Osvaldo Bido, the Pirates organization was extremely distraught over it. I was like, really, Bido? Like he wasn't that? And then he comes over to the A's, and then we saw the August that he had, and I was like, okay, makes sense. Of course the A's figured it out. But
yeah, and it happens, right? Like it's a change of scenery, and he loves it with the A. Like it's like he loves it there. He's happy. And his breaking ball was looking good the other day. I talked to him about it. So yeah, sometimes it's just like you have the right coaching and they figure it out. And it's the opposite too. Like sometimes guys don't thrive with the A's and they go somewhere else and then they thrive after that. And that's just kind of the risk that you take. But yeah, no, I heard that people were really bummed in the Pirates org that he was gone, but I don't care. Too bad, so sad. What are you gonna do?
Jessica, what about this bullpen? I feel like the biggest question mark for pretty much every major league team is always the bullpen, no matter what names you have, because it's a forever rotating door throughout the year. Although we got Pittsburgh native Mason Miller. By the way, watching Dallas Braden get into the box against Mason Miller is one of the best videos I've seen this entire offseason. I love
watching Dallas be frightened. It's my favorite thing in the world. It is my favorite thing.
Just genuine fear. And who wouldn't be? And then you added Jose Leclerc. Tyler Ferguson's also in a setup role. Can you talk about this group real quick? Real quick. TJ McFarland, Justin Sterner, Hogan Harris, Noah Murdoch, Mitch Spence. Some audible mentions coming out of spring: Grant Holman, Dylan Floro, Elvis Alvarado, Matt Crook. A lot of names. Are some of these guys going to be just in and out throughout the season, or is this kind of the group that you see going into opening day?
You mentioned Murdoch, and Kotz was ridiculously impressed with what he was able to do. Like I said, these guys, you don't know what you're going to get with them. Yeah. And the A's have a really good history of finding these diamonds in the rough. And he was definitely one of them. So he pitched recently, and Kotz had nothing but great things to say about him. But yeah, you basically listed them all. You mentioned Leclerc. I haven't been able to see him in person, but same thing, veteran presence. And when you were at the Rangers organization the entire time, that means you are very well loved. And that's something that I keep in mind for sure. And then Tyler Ferguson, you want to talk about a story, the minors for 10 years. And then he gets his big shot. And I will always love him because these guys didn't have any ties to Oakland, but they still paid tribute to former Oakland players. Tyler Ferguson played Grant Balfour's warm-up song. It was like the final week at the Coliseum. Like I said, he didn't have to do that, but you hear anything from Grant Balfour. What do they call it? The Rage. I should know that. But when you hear that song, One by Metallica is what it is. When they run out, we all heard it, and I look at Martin Gallegos. I'm like, he's doing it. So it's so wonderful, and I'm glad they were able to do that. But he has an amazing story as well, and the A's really loved him. And I know TJ was technically a free agent, but he was going to come back. I think we all knew that. He definitely knew that early on. And I love talking to him because as a veteran closer, he told me, adapt or die. And it's one thing that you have to do. You keep adding or fine tuning these pitches as time goes on. And this is, like a Sergio Romo type would constantly depend on one pitch. And that's great coming out of the bullpen because everybody's throwing with velocity. You need something to kind of even it out and play off of it. And Hogan Harris, I'm so excited to see what he does. That guy's ridiculous. Probably one of the worst MLB debuts in the history of MLB debuts, but definitely came back. And he's just fantastic. And we'll see what happens with like JT Ginn and those guys. And of course, Mitch Spence. And he could probably start, later on in the season. I don't have any information on that. I'm just speculating on that. But yeah, the bullpen's insane. And of course, Mason Miller is gonna, do it once again. And Brent Rooker even made the joke, like, I know I have to go up against Ben Joyce, but at least I don't have to go up against Mason Miller.
True.
Yeah.
It's a good trade-off.
Yeah.
How about some prospects? We've talked about Nick Kurtz. I think JT Ginn was mentioned. Who are some prospects that you're excited to follow this year, or do you think that could make an impact on this team?
Is Ginn still technically a prospect?
He might not be, actually.
I just don't know. They grow up so fast.
Yeah.
I just So I'm glad you asked this because it's my next article for Baseball America. Is like who the guys to watch for. Spring Breakout was dope, dude. That was like
we went to the Pirates last week. It was pretty cool.
My gosh, it was so good. And they're just. But I mentioned Colby Thomas. He's like an old school guy. Like his approach is really good. He was working on getting his strikeouts down. So I mentioned the left field scenario that might make things interesting. Obviously, a great guy to plug in if anything should happen to Blade or Law. Denzel Clark is beautiful, beautiful person. The most athletic I've ever seen. And he's related to the Nailers. And he's a late bloomer. He didn't really start playing baseball until he was 15. He's
Canadian.
very, very athletic. And I just talked to him about that. He goes, yeah, my mom put me in every sport imaginable to keep me that way. Defensively, I don't think there's anybody better than him, like even majors wise. I think he's better defensively than a lot of those outfielders. Because he made some amazing plays, not just during Spring Breakout, but the entirety of spring. It's just insane. If he works on his offense, he's going to be unstoppable. I think the number one guy that I'm the most excited about is Henry Bolte. And he's a linebacker with like a baby face and a Bay Area native too, which is really great. He went to Palo Alto High. And when they draft you in the first round, you go work out with the team. And he just happened to be in the area. So even though he wasn't drafted first overall, he came out to work out. And like his makeup is 80 grade. Like he was so soft-spoken or well-spoken for an 18-year-old. So I just spoke to him about everything and his defensive capabilities and how fast he is. Sprague said that the way that he is on the bases, like imagine having that dude on your team. So those are definitely the guys that I'm really looking forward to. And I forgot to kind of go into detail about Max Muncy. He would have, like I said, been promoted last season during those call-ups if he wasn't injured. Defensively, he's sound because you can always use a backup in him. And maybe he's the third baseman of the future. I know they're kind of depending on Ursula to kind of even out the rookiness in the infield or the young in the infield because they're not all rookies. But I think he's going to be if he keeps things the way that they are, he can be the third baseman of the future because the team hasn't had a third baseman, not just of Matt Chapman's caliber, but the consistency, like a consistent third baseman year after year. And that's literally a hole, and that's an important position. And because I'm not just saying this as a former third baseman myself, but I just feel like that it's so underappreciated as the most appreciated position. And I don't know how else to define it. But when you no longer have Matt Chapman on your team, you can tell how much of a loss not having that. So I think that that's like a big deal as well. And I know that they were looking for a third baseman. So bringing over Ursula and Urias is definitely going to be a positive there. And those are great additions now that I think about it. But for the future of these prospects, there's a lot of the farm system has way more depth than I could ever imagine. Probably since the Mats were in there, they were just prospects. They were just playing, in Stockton or when Matt Olson was constantly going up and down in AAA to the big leagues. That's when they were playing in Nashville too. So it was really difficult for them. But it's really exciting to see what these young guys are doing. And I will say every guy I've spoken to, Tommy White too, Tommy Tanks, and I don't know if you guys saw my hogfish tweet about him.
Yeah.
He had the big bling and it was like he went yard, Oppo home run. He didn't glow until we were talking about hogfish. And I was like, okay. Because like the thing about me is like, I'm going to be weird. And I'm like, what's that on your necklace? Like we were done talking to him and he was glowing. But his name's Tommy Tanks for a reason. He could also be the third baseman of the future as well. And from his hitting abilities and the way that he approaches. So there's a lot of promising young guys who are going to make a huge impact in the future.
Jessica, what about a pick to click? Who's one guy on the roster going into this year that's going to have a great year for this team to succeed?
Geloff, Zach Geloff. And
Is
he
he
knows
hurt right now?
he was taking grounders.
Okay.
So but he did get hit in the hand.
Gotcha.
When you ask if he's hurt, I don't know if you mean if he's on the IL or injured, but he was fielding ground balls last I heard. But he was hit on the hand with a ball. But he knows it too. Like, he was very aware of what happened in 2024. The average wasn't there. It was very up and down. We were looking at him and we thought he had figured things out at the plate, and that wasn't the case. I think he was actually playing the Rays when he had a successful few games, and we're like, maybe we fixed him, but that wasn't quite the case. So he needs to, step it up offensively. And it's not like I'm going to sit there and tell him anything he doesn't know. But the guy is, coming off of a really interesting debut where he did come as advertised, and sometimes that's a little bit more pressure. Like, the same thing happened with Corbin Carroll, right? But Corbin, showed up with like a bunch of, 20 more pounds of meat on his lower half. I think he's going to be fine. And then Geloff, concentrating on the bat is going to be crucial for him. But the beauty of him last year was, despite those low numbers, he was still contributing on the bases. And I'm not just talking about stealing bases. I'm talking about heads up base running that put the guys in opportunities to win. And he was still able to contribute in those ways. So if he has a decent time at the plate this season, really good things are going to happen.
Jessica, before we let you go, let's get a 2025 prediction. It could be team-oriented or player-oriented.
Well, I'm the easy one. I don't want to say easy. JJ Bleday is an all-star in 2025.
Love that.
And I think offensively, if he hits more home runs, and that's the thing about all-stars is like people care more about home runs than they do anything else. But he told me, he's like, home runs are mistakes. And the fact that you're saying that as an MLB player, when we used to say that like as T-ballers, right? I think that's really cool. So he's an all-star for me, probably Shea as well. But if the A's play as well as they should, there could be multiple all-stars on that team. I am a little bit nervous that they're going to want Nick, not they, meaning fans, are going to expect Nick Kurtz way earlier because of the way that Jacob Wilson came through the system. But I think people need to remind themselves that it takes a while to get to the bigs. It's not just like, oh, he's hitting 300, let's give him a chance. And sometimes maybe he'll get like a cup of coffee for a bit and then get a taste of it and go down. But I think he's big league ready after a little bit in the minors. So those are kind of my predictions. It'll be interesting to see how the prospects play out. I think everything else I'm not that worried about, but it'll be interesting to see how these prospects do, because you never know what could happen with injury. You never know what could happen with trades or whatever. And knowing that these prospects have a decent future with the team, that's kind of the big question mark for me.
Jessica, I can't thank you enough for breaking down the A's. I'm excited to watch this team this year, especially when they come to Pittsburgh, September 19th through the 21st. So hopefully we get to meet you out here.
I don't travel with the team, so
no.
But I've got to be in studio and hold stuff down here.
Sure.
Right.
I need to introduce myself to Sacramento too. So
exactly. Well, maybe we'll preview that series before they come out here. And where can all of our listeners find your work?
There's my Twitter handle right there. You guys beautifully did that. And then on Instagram, Jessica Kleinschmidt. I have a TikTok and it's blowing up, and that's Jess Kleinschmidt on there. Oh yeah, thriving. I put a lot of my funny, like the behind the scenes interviews with the guys on there, and people love that stuff. I almost ate shit, pardon my French, walking with Joey Estes. And you could see me like fighting for Joey's like deep in this conversation. He was so into it. And I'm standing there like I'm about to fall on my face right now. And then, a really good behind the scenes of me talking to JP Sears. Zach Geloff interrupted it and brought us water, which was super nice. but like ruin the entire interview. I'm just kidding. So those types of things. I'm really happy with that. And the kids love the TikToks, so I've been doing all that. So
they definitely do. We're trying to make a presence there, but yeah, we'll check out the TikTok and definitely have our followers do so as well. Jessica, thanks for coming on. I'm excited to watch this athletics team this year, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates or the steak by the plates. And